corridor didn't quiet down after the door shut. Boots still moved past in tight, controlled rhythm. Voices stayed low, clipped, never casual. Even the air felt regulated, like it knew better than to drift where it wasn't supposed to. She stood just outside the nurse's station, hands still, posture straight, trying to match the stillness around her. The clipboard in her grip wasn't heavy, but it anchored her. Orders, names, room numbers, structure, something she could follow. A senior nurse passed by without slowing. "You're assigned to Wing C now," she said, eyes forward. No delays, no deviations, no acknowledgement, no pause. "Yes, ma'am," the rookie replied, a fraction too late. Wing C wasn't like the rest of the facility. That much had already been made clear without anyone explaining it. The doors were thicker. The guards didn't just stand, they watched. Not patients, not staff, everything. As she moved down the corridor, her steps adjusted unconsciously, shorter, quieter, controlled. A pair of uniformed personnel stood outside a sealed door ahead. One of them shifted slightly as she approached, not blocking her path, but not moving aside either. "Identification," he said. She handed over her badge. He didn't look at her, only at the card, then the clipboard, then back at the card again. A beat longer than necessary. "New," the other one muttered. She didn't respond. There wasn't space for it. The badge came back. "Do your job. Stay in your lane." "Yes, sir." She moved on. Inside the station, monitors flickered with vitals, steady, controlled, almost unnaturally consistent. No chatter, no distractions, just quiet efficiency. Another nurse, older, experienced, adjusted in 4-line without looking up. "You're the new intake?" "Yes." A pause. Then, softer but sharper. "Then listen carefully. You don't ask questions here unless someone outranks you and invites them." The rookie nodded. "And if something feels wrong?" The older nurse finally looked at her. Not unkind, just firm. "It's probably because you're not clear to understand it." Silence settled between them. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened with a mechanical hiss. Precise, controlled. Not like the others. The rookie's eyes shifted toward the sound before she could stop herself. The older nurse noticed. "Focus on your assignments," she said. "Rooms are numbered for a reason." The rookie looked back down at her clipboard. The list was short, shorter than expected. Fewer patients, higher priority. Her grip tightened slightly. "First day?" the older nurse asked. "Yes." Another pause, then a quiet exhale. "Then remember this," she said. "In this place, rank doesn't always wear a uniform." The rookie didn't respond, but her eyes flicked, just once more, toward the corridor where the sealed doors stood, silent, guarded, and far too controlled to be ordinary. The list didn't take long to read. That was the first thing that felt wrong. 3 rooms. That was it. In a wing guarded like this, 3 patients didn't make sense. She checked the numbers again as she walked. The paper didn't change. The ink didn't shift. Still 3. Room 312. Room 314. Room 317. She slowed as she passed 313. No handle. No panel. Just a smooth, uninterrupted surface where a door should have been. Even the seams were almost invisible, like it had been sealed long before she arrived. Her steps hesitated, just for a second. "Keep moving." The voice came from behind her. One of the guards. Not loud, not aggressive, just immediate. She didn't turn. "Yes, sir." Her pace corrected instantly. Room 312 opened with a standard access code. Inside, everything looked normal at first glance. Monitors, for line, a patient resting under thin white sheets. No restraints, no visible injuries beyond what she'd expect. But the silence stretched too far. Most rooms had small sounds. Machines humming unevenly. Fabric shifting. A breath catching. Here, everything was measured. She checked the vitals. Stable. Perfectly stable. Too perfect. The patient's eyes opened without warning. Sharp. Focused. Not groggy. Not confused. Watching her, she kept her tone steady. "I'm here to check your vitals." No response. Just that steady gaze, tracking her movements like he was the one assessing her. Her hands moved efficiently. Pulse, chart, for line. Routine. Controlled. But she could feel it. That quiet pressure in the room. Not fear. Evaluation. When she stepped back, his eyes didn't follow her to the door. They stayed fixed at head level, like he already knew exactly where she'd go. She left without speaking again. The door sealed behind her with a soft click. In the hallway, she exhaled once. Slow, controlled. Room 314 was different. Before she even reached it, she noticed the change. A nurse stood outside, arms crossed, posture rigid. Not waiting, guarding. You're assigned here? The nurse asked. Yes. A pause. The nurse's eyes flicked down to the clipboard, then back up. They didn't brief you. It wasn't a question. The rookie held her ground. I have my orders. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the nurse stepped aside, but only just enough. Keep it quick. Inside, the lights were dimmer. Not broken, intentional. The patient sat upright, not lying down. No restraints again. No visible reason for the tension pressing against the walls. He didn't look at her when she entered. He looked at the door, like he was listening for something beyond it. She moved closer, careful with each step. Routine check, she said. His head tilted slightly, not toward her, toward the corner of the room, where a small, dark lens was embedded high near the ceiling. A camera. She followed his gaze for a fraction of a second. That was enough. Careful what you say in here, he muttered. Quiet, controlled, almost casual. Her chest tightened, but her face didn't show it. I'm just here to do my job. Now he looked at her, not like the first patient. This was different. This was recognition, not of her, but of what she didn't know. Yeah, he said softly. That's what they all say at the start. A faint sound came through the wall, metal shifting. Distant, but deliberate. Her attention flicked instinctively toward it. The patient noticed. They don't like attention drifting, he added. She finished the check faster than protocol required. Vitals, stable again. Too stable. As she turned to leave, his voice followed her. Rooms don't always match the numbers here. Her hand paused on the panel, just for a second. Then she stepped out. The door sealed. The nurse outside didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. Last one's at the end, she said quietly. Room 317. The corridor felt longer now. Quieter. Even the guards stood differently near the end. Less relaxed, more deliberate. As she approached, she noticed something else. No observation window. No external monitor. Nothing. Just a door. Playing. Unmarked. And yet, 2 armed personnel stood on either side. Not speaking, not moving. Waiting. For what? She wasn't sure. Her steps slowed despite herself. One of them glanced at her clipboard, then at her. A brief pause, then a single nod. Permission, but it didn't feel like routine clearance. It felt like a decision. The panel beside room 317 didn't light up when she approached. It stayed dark. No keypad. No prompt. Just a smooth surface reflecting the overhead lights in a dull, muted strip. She waited. One of the armed personnel shifted his weight slightly. Not toward her, toward the door. Then he raised a hand and pressed his thumb against the concealed plate. A soft tone sounded. Low. Controlled. The door unlocked. Not for her. For him. He stepped aside and gave a single nod. Inside. Alone. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard. Yes, sir. The door opened just enough for her to slip through. It sealed behind her before she could take a second step. The room wasn't dark, but it wasn't bright either. The lighting sat somewhere in between, carefully balanced, like every shadow had been placed on purpose. No visible monitors. No 4 lines. No standard equipment. Just a single chair. And someone standing near the far wall. Not restrained. Not seated. Waiting. Her training pushed her forward anyway. Routine check, she said, voice even. The figure didn't respond immediately. He turned slowly instead. Measured. Deliberate. Not surprised. His uniform wasn't complete. No visible insignia. No rank displayed. But it wasn't casual either. Everything about it was intentional. Her eyes caught the details without meaning to. The cut of the fabric. The way it fit. The absence of identification. Nothing standard. Nothing she recognized from orientation. I wasn't informed of a scheduled visit, he said. Calm. Controlled. Not questioning. Stating. She kept her posture straight. I have orders to complete checks on all assigned rooms. A pause. His gaze settled on the clipboard in her hands. Then back to her face. You're new. Not a question. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. He stepped closer. Not aggressively, but with a precision that made the distance between them feel smaller than it was. Who cleared you for this wing? Her response came automatically. Medical command assigned. Names. The interruption was quiet, but it landed harder than volume would have. Her grip shifted slightly. Protocol said answer. Instinct said wait. Orders were logged through standard channels, she said carefully. Another pause. Longer this time. He studied her, not like the others had. Not assessing her competence. Assessing her restraint. A faint sound came from the door behind her. A lock adjusting. Not opening. Just reacting. She didn't turn. Didn't break eye contact. Something about that felt important. You walked in here without hesitation, he said. You followed your assignment. Yes, sir. And you haven't asked a single question. No, sir. Another step closer. Now the space between them felt intentional. Controlled by him. Most people do, he said. At least once. Her pulse stayed steady. Externally. I was told not to ask questions unless invited. For the first time, something shifted. Not in his posture. In the air. A slight change. Like a test had just reached its next stage. Good, he said quietly. His gaze flicked. Not to her, but to a point just behind her shoulder. Instinct pulled at her to turn. She didn't. Do you always follow instructions this precisely? He asked. Yes, sir. Another pause. Then, softer. Even when something feels wrong? Her answer didn't come immediately. Just a fraction of a second. But it was there. Yes, sir. The silence stretched. He watched her closely now. Not evaluating her role. Evaluating her answer. You hesitated. It wasn't an accusation. Just an observation. Her jaw tightened slightly. For less than a second. And you're aware of it. Yes, sir. A faint exhale left him. Not frustration. Something closer to acknowledgement. From outside the room, muffled voices passed. Quick. Controlled. Then gone. The facility was still moving. Still operating. But this room felt separate from it. Isolated. Deliberately. You've been through standard intake training, he said. Yes, sir. They taught you how to observe without reacting. Yes, sir. They didn't teach you what to do when the environment doesn't match the rules. That wasn't something she could answer. So she didn't. Another silence. Then he stepped past her, close enough that she could feel the shift in air. He stopped near the door, not touching it, just there. You noticed the differences, he said. It wasn't a question. Her fingers tightened slightly on the clipboard again. Yes, sir. Fewer patients. Yes, sir. No standard monitoring. Yes, sir. No visible chain of command. That one lingered. A fraction longer. She answered anyway. Yes, sir. He nodded once. Slow. Measured. Good. Another near silence settled. Then, a sharp tone cut through the room. Not from the door. From somewhere unseen. Brief. Precise. His head tilted slightly. Listening. Then his gaze returned to her. Your assignment here is complete. The words came clean. Final. But something about them didn't feel like dismissal. It felt like containment. She didn't move immediately. Protocol said confirm. Vitals check. Unnecessary. The interruption was calm. Absolute. Her training pushed back. Every room required. She stopped herself. Mid-thought. That hadn't happened before. Another test. Another line. And she had almost crossed it. Yes, sir, she said instead. He watched her for a moment longer. Then gave a small nod toward the door. Permission. But again, it felt like a decision, not a routine one. She turned. Stepped toward the panel. Before she could reach it, the lock disengaged on its own. The door opened. From the outside. She paused just at the threshold. Not turning back. But aware. Completely aware that the person behind her wasn't just another patient. And whatever this wing actually was, she wasn't supposed to understand it. Not yet. The door sealed behind her with a soft, final click. For a moment, she didn't move. The corridor outside felt colder than before, not in temperature, but in presence. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty, just controlled. Two armed personnel stood exactly where they had been. Neither looked at her directly. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Done, one of them said. Not a question. A confirmation. Yes, she replied automatically. The word felt heavier leaving her mouth than it should have. A pause followed. Not long, but enough to feel intentional. Then the guard stepped aside. Returned to station. She moved. Her steps were steady, but not the same as before. Something had shifted in how the hallway felt beneath her feet. The rhythm of the facility no longer matched her internal pacing. Too many things now didn't align. At the nurse's station, the senior staff barely acknowledged her return. No questions. No curiosity. Only a glance. And then back to work. Vitals, the older nurse asked without looking up. Stable, she said. Her voice was correct. Her delivery was not. The nurse finally looked at her properly. Just for a second. That was enough. Report file. She handed over the clipboard. It was taken immediately, reviewed faster than expected, then closed. No follow-up questions. No discussion. Just a small nod. Log it, the nurse said, and turned away. That should have been normal. It wasn't. She stood there a moment longer than necessary, waiting for something that didn't come. Clarification, instruction, anything. But the station had already moved on, as if room 317 had never existed in the way her mind was still processing it. She started the paperwork, entered vitals, times, observations. Her fingers moved correctly. Her thoughts didn't, because the details kept replaying without permission. The silence in the room that wasn't silence. The way the patient spoke like he wasn't inside a system. The absence of insignia. The way the guards reacted differently around that door. Not like protectors, but like participants in something already decided. She paused mid-entry, cursor blinking. Too long. A junior nurse passed behind her station, glanced at the screen, then slowed slightly. You're off rotation after this, the junior said casually. She looked up. What? Supervisor shift change, the nurse replied. You weren't told. No, she hadn't been told. The junior shrugged. It happens fast here, especially after Wing C assignments. That name again. Wing C. Not spoken loudly, not openly discussed, always delivered like it carried limits. She turned back to the screen, but the words weren't aligning easily anymore. Later, in the break area, she washed her hands longer than necessary. The water ran steady, too steady. Her reflection in the metal sink looked unchanged, but she didn't feel unchanged. A senior officer passed by the doorway, briefly stopping when he saw her. He didn't enter, just looked, not at her face, at her badge, then at her hands, then away. No greeting, no acknowledgement, just assessment, and gone. She dried her hands slowly, too slowly. Back in the corridor, she caught fragments of conversation between two staff members. Shouldn't have been assigned so early. Command clearance changed last night. Don't mention 317 unless asked. Her name wasn't mentioned. But her assignment was. That felt worse. Not because she was in trouble, but because she wasn't important enough to be addressed directly. Just processed, filed, moved. At the end of the hallway, the sealed Wing C corridor remained unchanged. Same guards, same silence, same controlled distance from everything else. But now, when she looked at it, it didn't feel like a place she had simply visited. It felt like a boundary she had already crossed without understanding where it led. She returned to her station, sat down, picked up the pen, and paused. Just once, long enough for the older nurse to notice. Don't think about it, the nurse said quietly, without looking up from her chart. Not harsh, not warning, just fact. The rookie nodded and wrote the next line. But for the first time since she had entered Wing C, she wasn't sure if she was documenting a patient or something she was now part of without permission.